Okay, so we begin our discussion of Baudrillard's essay once again. Here he talks about political incantation and refers to the Watergate scandal. Same scenario as Disneyland, an imaginary effect concealing that reality no more exists outside than inside the bounds of the artificial perimeter. Though here it is a scandal effect concealing that there is no difference between the facts and their denunciation. And Baudrillard says that the CIA and the Washington Post journalists, they employ identical methods. Same operation, though this time tending towards scandal as a means to regenerate a moral and political principle, towards the imaginary as a means to regenerate a reality principle in distress. So the Watergate scandal was a process where there is a scandal effect because actually there is no difference between the facts and their denunciation, which means that there was a kind of haze created by the journalists. And this is an example of the real situation when in the hyper real world this imaginary is used as a means to regenerate a reality principle in distress. The purpose of creating a scandal by journalism is to simulate a reality principle that truth and honor are real. But Baudrillard looks at a much greater philosophical interpretation of our situation where this reality principle is absent, but scandalously with the help of imaginary it is pretended that it is there. The denunciation of scandal always pays homage to the law, and Watergate above all succeeded in imposing the idea that Watergate was a scandal. So if you believe in scandal, then if you call something a scandal, then you believe that there is law, that this law was violated somewhere, and this led to a scandal, that this violation could not be discovered earlier. So scandal means that there is a belief in law. In this sense, it was an extraordinary operation of intoxication. The re-injection of a large dose of political morality on a global scale. The purpose was to intoxicate the people by injecting them with the principle of morality, which was actually absent in the world. But journalism created an aura or an illusion of political morality. It could be said along with Bourdieu that the specific character of every relation of force is to dissimulate itself as such and to acquire all its force only because it is so dissimulated. Pierre Bourdieu is a sociologist, anthropologist, and he said that every relation of force dissimulates itself. That is, the force that acts upon others does not present itself as acting upon others. So it is always in a disguise. It dissimulates itself, and here the notion of the force is that of capital. Capital, which is immoral and unscrupulous, can only function behind a moral superstructure, and whoever regenerates this public morality by indignation, denunciation, etc., spontaneously furthers the order of capital, as did the Washington Post journalists. So Baudrillard is talking about an ironical situation. The world, the capitalist world, does not have any morality, but in order to sanctify its existence, it keeps harping on morality. And the representation of a scandal, of a violation of morality, of a violation of law, was manufactured by journalists, because by that means only capital could present itself as being honest and moral. So according to Bourdieu, and which is also endorsed by Baudrillard, that the Washington Post journalists, by reporting the Watergate scandal, they were actually strengthening the illusion that there is something called political morality, which was actually not there. But this is still only the formula of ideology, and when Bourdieu enunciates it, he takes relation of force to mean the truth of capitalist domination, and he denounces this relation of force as itself a scandal. He therefore occupies the same deterministic and moralistic position as the Washington Post journalists. So Baudrillard says that when Bourdieu uncovers capital as immoral, and he then presupposes the truth of capitalist domination, that is, capital dominating over all other classes which are not capitalist, and this domination or this relation of force is a scandal because it should not be done. So this belief of Bourdieu still retains the belief that there is something called truth, there is something called law, there is something called morality, and capital is flouting all that. So by Marxist analysis, it is possible to discover the true face of capitalism. And this is ideology. So Bourdieu is attacking capitalist ideology with Marxist ideology. So this is at the level of ideology. If you remember the 4 stages of the image earlier said by Baudrillard, mentioned by Baudrillard, then you understand that at the first stage there is still ideology at operation, when one believes that there is some truth and there is a violation of that truth, and that violation must be discovered. But according to Baudrillard's analysis, which is postmodern analysis, and therefore it does not believe in the presence of any truth, and therefore if you do not believe in truth, you also do not believe in ideology. So from a postmodern point of view, the world has passed beyond truth and ideology to a level of hyper-real. So Baudrillard says that Bourdieu does the same job of purging and reviving moral order, an order of truth wherein the genuine symbolic violence of the social order is engendered. So the social order faces a violence and well beyond all relations of force, which are only its indifferent and shifting configuration with the moral and political consciousness of men. So in this belief of Bourdieu, there is still this faith in moral and political consciousness of men, and a belief that the relations of force violates this consciousness. All that capital asks of us is to receive it as rational, or to combat it in the name of rationality, to receive it as moral, or to combat it in the name of morality. And This interpretation, we may say it is a postmodern interpretation, but it is another level of exposition of capital. Capital wants us to be engaged with it, either to believe it as moral or to believe it as immoral, either to believe it as rational or to oppose it as irrational. Whatever you do, you are engaging with capital, and therefore you are believing in this non-truth and thinking it to be truth. Because ultimately, whether you receive it or whether you oppose it, they are identical, meaning they can be read another way. Before the task was to dissimulate scandal. Today the task is to conceal the fact that there is none. So, there is no scandal in the sense that if there is no reality, if there is no morality, if there is no truth, then there cannot be any violation of them, and therefore there cannot be any scandal. But it has become important today that we conceal this fact, and we do that by simulation. Watergate is not a scandal, this is what must be said at all cost, but this is what everyone is concerned to conceal. This dissimulation masking a strengthening of morality, a moral panic as we approach the primal mise-en-scène of capital, its instances of cruelty, its incomprehensible ferocity, its fundamental immorality. This is what is scandalous, unaccountable for, in that system of moral and economic equivalence which remains the axiom of leftist thought from Enlightenment theory to communism. Therefore you see here how the postmodern attitude goes beyond leftist thought, goes beyond communistic thought. Because the communist thought believes in rationalism, dialectic, and truth as the Enlightenment theory believed it. So, communism is a successor to the Enlightenment thought, to Enlightenment rationality. And therefore, when communism talks about the primitive scene of capitalism, primal mise-en-scène, primitive scene of capitalism, about its cruelty, ferocity, immorality, and so on and so forth. So if you believe in that, then you are believing that there is something which creates value in this world. But from a postmodern point of view, there is no such ultimate reference point that would give value or that would create value, and therefore all this talk about immorality, and so on, cruelty, violation, all this is imaginary. They try to create an illusion of there being some value or there being some truth, whereas there is actually no such thing. Capital doesn't give a damn about the idea of the contract which is imputed to it. It is a monstrous, unprincipled undertaking, nothing more. The idea that there is a social contract, the idea that the social classes should come to an understanding and sharing of resources, this is purely fiction. Capital does not care about it. Rather, it is enlightened thought which seeks to control capital by imposing rules on it. And all that recrimination which replaced revolutionary thought today comes down to reproaching capital for not following the rules of the game. So, enlightened thought is another produce of bourgeois capital, bourgeois development. And this enlightened thought believes that capital should follow its dictates and that capital can be kept in check by enlightened thought. But that is pure imagination. Capital does not listen to it. Power is unjust, its justice is a class justice, capital exploits us, and so on and so forth. So this is, you can see, a Marxist point of view, that class justice, capitalism, capital exploits labor, and so on and so forth. As if capital were linked by a contract to the society it rules. It is the left which holds out the mirror of equivalence, hoping that capital will fall for this phantasmagoria of the social contract and fulfill its obligation towards the whole of society. Now this whole idea is a phantasmagoria. There is no foundation of this idea. Why should there be any contract? There is no such social contract. This is all created by enlightenment reason, and capital will not fall for it, because capital is like some primitive force that cannot be controlled. Capital in fact has never been linked by a contract to the society it dominates. It is a sorcery of the social relation. It is a challenge to society and should be responded to as such. So social relation which has been imagined in the most benign way, that the classes should take care of one another. That is completely a creation of enlightenment reason, and capital challenges that idea. Capital is a sorcery of social relation. This capital is a kind of a magic which kind of conceals this social relation. So if we understand society to be groups of people united by some common understanding, then capital does not have any common understanding. It does not subscribe to any understanding with the different groups. Therefore, it is a challenge to society, and society should face this challenge. It is not a scandal to be denounced according to moral and economic rationality, but a challenge to take up according to symbolic law. So it has nothing to do with morality according to Baudrillard, but nevertheless it is a challenge that must be taken up with the help of the idea of some law which should be there to keep capital in check. But this law is of course not any real law, but a symbolic law. Then Baudrillard comes to another idea taken from Foucault, the end of the panopticon. Foucault discussed this idea of panopticon. It is a prison building designed by English philosopher Jeremy Bentham. Its key feature was that every inmate could be seen at all times by the guard. Michel Foucault discusses the panopticon in Discipline and Punish, which Baudrillard mentions later. So the panopticon means that one is always under surveillance. From everywhere or anywhere, a person can be seen under surveillance. And this is a model created by Bentham, and this model therefore is a bourgeois model of the prison, the carceral society, where every individual is under surveillance. But Baudrillard would state here how this model comes to an end in the postmodern scenario. It is again to this ideology of the lived experience of exhumation of the real in its fundamental banality, in its radical authenticity, that the American TV verite experiment on the Loud family in 1971 refers. So TV verite is coined by Baudrillard on the basis of film verite, cinema verite. The documentary films in France are called cinema verite or film truth. So TV verite, there is TV programs which document, to make a documentation of people's lives. And the experiment on the Loud's family in 1971. Baudrillard's topic is a 12-part documentary called An American Family, covering the daily life of an affluent Santa Barbara family, William and Pat Loud and their 5 children, which were shot by Alan and Susan Raymond beginning in 1971. During filming, the marriage of the Louds broke up, and the film also outed the family's gay son, Lance. The program was first aired by the Public Television Network in 1973. So, here we see the influence of TV on people's life. And this family which was being videographed 24 hours, the effect was ultimately that the family broke up. They divorced. And then there was a debate whether it was because of the TV verite, because of this documentation that their family broke up or not. And also one of the sons was gay, which was earlier concealed, but it came to be known, become public knowledge. So this TV program created a lot of debate on the issue of how far people's privacy should be allowed to be invaded by the media. 7 months of uninterrupted shooting, 300 hours of direct broadcasting without script of scenario, the odyssey of a family, its dramas, its joys, ups and downs, a raw historical document and the best thing ever on television, comparable at the level of our daily existence to the film of the lunar landing. Things are complicated by the fact that this family came apart during the shooting, a crisis paired up, the Louds went their separate ways. So, who was responsible? And whether we should ask, whether we should say that the TV was responsible, or what would have happened if TV had not been there. Now, Baudrillard puts this in italics, if TV had not been there, meaning that today there is no such possibility. We are always under surveillance. So, not being under surveillance is no longer a possibility. So they were the Louds family members. They were told to behave in a way as if TV was not there. So this is a utopia, and the 20 million viewers enjoyed how they could pry upon the private lives of the family. So in this truth experiment, it is neither a question of secrecy nor of perversion, but of a kind of thrill of the real, or of an aesthetics of the hyper-real, a thrill of vertiginous and phony exactitude, a thrill of alienation and of magnification, of distortion in scale, of excessive transparency, all at the same time. So in this case, what is truth? The truth of the family life of the Loud family was the TV showing the truth. Truth is within double inverted commas, because in such a situation where the family knows that the TV is documenting all its movements, all its activities, then how genuine can those movements be? There will always be a consciousness that one's daily life is like acting. So it is difficult to say that the depiction of the family in this case was depiction of their true lives. But that is how it was sold to the 20 million viewers. They enjoyed it because they came to believe that they are looking at a family which, as if the members do not know that they are under surveillance. So it has a thrill of reality, like today's reality shows. So Baudrillard says that this is an aesthetics of the hyper-real. It is neither real nor unreal, but it is hyper-real, and its exactitude or its trueness, its truth, is phony. It is not true, but it is neither false nor true, it is phony. So there is a joy to be found here because of an excess of meaning, and the bar of the sign slips below the regular waterline of meaning. So in this case, the images which are signs standing as a reference to some reality like social reality, that function of the sign here is absent, because it is no longer a sign but it is represented as reality itself. So it is not a dissimulation, but it is the real thing. It is being represented in that way. The non-signifier is elevated by the camera angle. Here the real can be seen to have never existed. So I started discussing the section, the end of the panopticon. The panopticon was mentioned by Michel Foucault in his book Discipline and Punish. It talks about a prison building designed by Jeremy Bentham in the late 18th century, early 19th century. So it is a model of a prison where all inhabitants of the prison can always be seen by the guard 24/7. So it is designed in such a manner. Therefore, Foucault talks about the carceral society. Now, here Baudrillard suggests that this model of prison, or the model of society itself as prison, comes to an end in the postmodern situation. And he gives an example of a TV documentary, TV Verite. Baudrillard coins this phrase in imitation of cinéma verite. In French, cinéma verite means film documentary or film truth. So this TV Verite experiment, which captured the Loud family 7 months continuously for 300 hours and broadcast it. So it was like an experiment in what today we call reality show. And Baudrillard says that at the end of this experiment, the family broke up. The man and wife divorced each other, and one of the sons was discovered to be gay. So it had an adverse impact on the family, and there was a lot of debate whether the TV was responsible for this or not. And what would have happened if TV had not been there? And we see TV had not been there is in italics because Baudrillard suggests that there is no such situation today when we are not under surveillance. We are always under surveillance, like the Loud family members. And so this truth experiment is not a secrecy or perversion, but 20 million viewers watched it because it was a utopian situation which provided a thrill of reality, a thrill of the real, and there cannot be any true aesthetics of this scenario, of this art form, because it was not the real life of the Louds family, considering that they knew that they were under TV surveillance. Therefore, it was neither real nor unreal, and Baudrillard says that it is a kind of hyper-real. And this example of the Louds family and the perverted joy that the viewers took in this, joy in the microscopic simulation which transformed the real into the hyper-real. This is a kind of example that helps in illustrating our situation today, when we are in the hyper-real, having lost any faith in reality. The Louds, simply a family who agreed to deliver themselves into the hands of television and to die from it, said the producer. So, as if this family sacrificed themselves to the cause of television. A sacrificial spectacle offered to 20 million Americans, the liturgical drama of a mass society. A truth which is no longer the reflexive truth of the mirror, nor the perspective truth of the panoptic system and of the gaze, but the manipulative truth of the test which probes and interrogates, of the laser which touches and then pierces, of computer cards which retain your punched out sequences, of the genetic code which regulates your combinations, of cells which inform your sensory universe. So, Baudrillard tries to explain that the kind of truth that TV Verite tried to present to the public was not a reflective truth like in the earlier conception of mimesis, where the reality is real and it is reflected in art. Nor it is the perspective truth of the panoptic system, because in that system everybody is always under the gaze of the God. So from the perspective of the God everything can be seen, but still that is a truth, because there is no unreality in that situation. But in the case of TV Verite, it is a manipulative truth. It is a kind of an experiment, it is a kind of a test, and therefore it is more of hyper-real rather than any representation of reality. And then he says that the end of the panoptic system comes. So the panoptic system, if we take it as an example of bourgeois attempt at controlling our lives with the absolute gaze, the perspective which was a product of the Renaissance, the omnipotence of a despotic gaze, this comes to an end when in this experiment you no longer watch TV, TV watches you live. So the panoptic system of surveillance is replaced by a system of deterrence. The Louds family is not subject to the absolute gaze of TV, but are themselves the majority. The distinction between model and majority is blurred in this utopian reality. So this idea is presented here. You no longer listen to Pa the Panic listens to you. Pa the Panic means do not panic. Switching over from the panoptic apparatus of surveillance to a system of deterrence, where the distinction between active and passive is abolished. So you are the model, you are the majority, which means that in such a situation there is no distinction between the those who are gazing at others and others who are victims of surveillance, because when there is no reality about it, then it is the majority or the people is become the model. So it is not like one or two persons are taken and represented as models of the people, but the entire majority becomes the model. Such is the slope of a hyper-realist sociality where the real is confused with the model. The classical age of propaganda, ideology, publicity, etc. Are no longer meaningful, but one of dissuasion or deterrence. You are news, you are the social, the event is you, you are involved, you can use your voice, and so on. So we see that Baudrillard here uses an idea of deterrence, which is actually a political idea. The question is, in which sense deterrence can be used here? What does it deter? So deterrence is used to mean that the nuclear war will be deterred if there are small wars and so on. But in this case, in this social experiment, what is deterred? It is the revelation that there is no truth which is being deterred in this case. No more subject, focal point, center or periphery, but pure flexion or circular inflection. No more violence or surveillance. Only information, secret virulence, chain reaction, slow implosion and simulacra of spaces where the real effect again comes into play. So here Baudrillard using a term, implosion, that is in order to convey the idea of the self-referentiality. Explosion means that everything comes out and becomes visible to others, but implosion is something which happens inside and therefore is not visible to others. Therefore, everything takes place in a simulacrum and everything is invisible, but everything can be looked upon as an effect. We are witnessing the end of perspective and panoptic space, which remains a moral hypothesis bound up with every classical analysis of the objective essence of power, and hence the very abolition of the spectacular. So the panopticon was a model of the spectacular, that is, that which can be seen with one's eyes. But this hyperreal cannot be seen. It is not spectacular. So the bourgeois model of panopticon comes to an end in the hyperreal. Television, in the case of the Louds, is no longer a spectacular medium. We are no longer in the society of spectacle, which the situation is talked about, nor in the specific types of alienation and repression. The medium itself is no longer identifiable as such, and the merging of the medium and the message is the first great formula of this new age. So here Baudrillard is borrowing from Marshall McLuhan. McLuhan first spoke about the confusion between medium and message in modern electronic representation. Here is a long note on this message of McLuhan, which is borrowed by Baudrillard here. The medium itself is not identifiable, and medium and message merge. Therefore, who is watching over what? That is no longer identifiable. and what is the message coming out of it. So that is not, that cannot be identified, as there is a circularity rather than spectacularity. Such a mixture, such a viral, endemic, chronic, alarming presence of the medium without our being able to isolate its effects, spectralized like those publicity holograms sculptured in empty space with laser beams, the event filtered by the medium, the dissolution of TV into light, the dissolution of light into TV, an indiscernible chemical solution. We are all louds, doomed not to invasion, to pressure, to violence, to blackmail by the media, but to their induction, to their infiltration, to their illegible violence. Which means that our lives no longer remain genuine. Our lives merge with the medium, the electronic representation. So this McLuhan's message is here explained. Thus is expressed by an inverse simulation, the passage from the analyzed to the analyzant, from active to passive, which only goes to describe the swirling mobile effect of the poles, its effect of circularity in which power is lost, resolved into complete manipulation. Therefore, in the hyperreal, there are no more any poles, and we cannot see the movement of power or the force of power. When there is no longer any polarity, the distinction between the analyzer and the analyzed, sender and receiver of message becomes invisible. Speech and power becomes circular. And this is expressed by Baudrillard as a gigantic circumlocution of the spoken word, which amounts to irredeemable blackmail and immovable deterrence of the subject supposed to speak. The subject actually cannot speak. Speech is deterred, left without a word to say, responseless, since questions asked can come the inevitable reply, but you are the reply, or your question is already an answer. So it is circularity. If the people become the medium, then what will be the source of message? Can the people ask any questions? The people themselves become the reply. So the distinction between the analyzed and the analyzer, or the active and the passive, disappears. All this undoubtedly began in the political sphere with the democratic simulacrum, that is to say, with the substitution of the instance of the people for the instance of God as source of power, and the substitution of power as representation for power as emanation. So here is some significant statement made by Baudrillard, that when we decided that we would go for democracy, then the authority of God could no longer be a model. So in the model where there is God, or there is absolute truth, there all power is concentrated in the absolute truth. God is all power, nobody else has power. But when we believe in democracy, then we make the entire people a simulacrum, where power is diffused. So it is a political explanation, and as long as there was a belief in this referential God or poles, kings, powerful people, even capitalists. So as long as there was belief in such referential nodes, it was representation. Power was represented through these different nodes. But when these are no longer believed in, and people become everything, then it is no longer representation but an emanation. So Baudrillard calls this an anti-Copernican revolution, because Copernicus spoke about the sun being at the center and the planets revolving around them. But in a democratic system, all the planets are in the center. Therefore, it is anti-Copernican. So all people become, the center. It is through this magnificent recycling that the universal simulacrum of manipulation from the scenario of mass suffrage to present day and illusory opinion polls begins to be installed. Opinion polls, first we had mass suffrage, that is everybody had the right to vote, and then today we have opinion polls. Do people actually have any power? Do these opinions actually count? Probably not. Therefore, it is an illusion. But it is this system which has been involved, and such a system is, so we are looking at the notes, we have said that we must think of the media as if they were in outer orbit, a sort of genetic code which controls the mutation of the real into the hyperreal, just as the other micromolecular code controls the passage of the signal from a representative sphere of meaning to the genetic sphere of the programmed signal. So Baudrillard says that the hyperreal must be understood as a different model, which may be called orbital, like all the planets orbiting, or which may be called genetic, because in the genetic model all the cells are independent or are same. Therefore, the model must be now orbital and genetic in the hyperreal situation. The genetic code controls mutation of the real into the hyperreal, as if the sphere of meaning, the passage of the signal from a representative sphere of meaning to the genetic sphere of the programmed signal. This phrase programmed signal, it suggests that the reality is no longer authentic or spontaneous, but everything has been programmed. So we are moving to the cybernetic reality, and this model is no longer representative. There is no representation of meaning. We have moved beyond that stage of representation to the genetic sphere. Okay. So he will further go on explaining this model, and he calls it the DNA model. We must imagine TB on the DNA model as an effect in which the opposing poles of determination vanish according to a nuclear contraction or retraction of the old polar schema, which has always maintained a minimal distance between a cause and an effect, between subject and object. So the older model, where we had different poles, like the viewer of the TV program and the actors of the TV program, or subject and object. So we had different poles, and there is always some distance between these, cause and effect, active and passive. But in the DNA model, there is no such distance, and the meaning gap, the discrepancy, the difference, the smallest possible margin of error, irreducible under penalty of reabsorption into an aleatory and indeterminable process which discourse can no longer even account for. Okay. So here aleatory means random, like dice throwing. Aleator is a Latin for dice player, which means that everything is random, everything occurs by chance, and therefore this cause and effect or difference or gap, this cannot be seen anymore. It vanishes. In the genetic coding process, this gap vanishes, but indeterminacy is less a product of molecular randomness than a product of the evolution of the relation. Alright. So we are coming to a model where relation is abolished, representation is abolished, and Baudrillard calls this model orbital, nuclear, genetic, DNA model, and so on, to suggest that here there is this overall disappearance of the gap between the poles, subject and object, cause and effect, active and passive, and so on. Alright, so we'll stop here. If you have any questions, you can ask.